So this talk is really about Project One and the case for change. For those of you who don't know me, I am Jon Phillips. I've been working with Norse for the last 10 months. Initially, I was working really with HR and the HR function. And over the last few months, or 3 months, I've been looking at the wider program of Project One in the role of project director. What I'm going to present to you today is really the case for change, and a lot of this, basis of this was really what we presented to the Norse board as part of the business case for gaining approval for the project. I must also just highlight this about me. If you've got this thing in your, I think it's brown bag, there's a QR code at the back, and that will download you an app which you can then ask questions from. So we might have time for some Q&A later today, but also we'll capture people's questions and be able to answer them at a later date. I think one of the first questions is why Project One? Because I think previously it was called Project Viking, and why do we change the name? So we actually closed Project Viking down because Project Viking was very much around systems and system selection. But actually what we're really trying to do as Norse is really create one way of doing things. We're trying to have a lot of standardization in the way that we operate as a business. And that's what this project's really trying to achieve, hence retitling it to be Project One. So let me start off with a question for you, a bit of a rhetorical question. But what actually links all these different companies together? I think you'll probably recognize all of these different brand names. Well, the answer is when I started thinking about doing this talk, I went to an AI tool. And there's an AI tool now that actually writes presentations for you. And I asked it to write a presentation for me on the case for change. And what was interesting when it generated the slides for me is that one of the key messages it talked about was the history of organizations that have actually failed to adapt to change. I think you'll recognize some of the names in here and some of the situations they've been in. So I think everybody knows that Blockbuster isn't here anymore. And one of the reasons that is they failed to adapt to on the Netflix world. In fact, they were offered Netflix as a company they could have purchased into early days. Kodak thought film was the future and not digital cameras. And Borders thought the shop was still going to be king when actually Amazon came along. So the point is that organizations are constantly changing and they need to change to survive. So it's not really a question about what is the case for change, it's actually why this particular change for Norse. So these are 8 reasons or 8 drivers that we presented to the board in terms of the case for change. We're just going to talk through each of these the next few minutes. The first one is systems replacement. So at the moment we have Great Plains as our financial system. At some point in the future that will become unsupported and therefore we need to replace that system. But also if you think to yourself about people or finance related processes, just think about the vast number of different systems that you currently have to go in to deliver those processes. Surely there must be a better way of doing that and changing really the systems landscape to be able to do that. Service improvement. And this could almost be the one reason for doing this, but it's about looking at the services delivered by HR and finance and looking at how can we improve those services. So that's about looking about standard processes, standard systems, best practice to really improve standardized services into the Norse enterprise. The role of the line manager. So the role of the line manager is really important. It's really important in terms of managing people. It's also important in terms of managing the financial aspects of the business. What we really need to do as an organisation is really define who are our line managers and really what is the role and the expectation of those line managers, and how does that fit with what HR and the finance areas are delivering into the organisation. Also, if we start to implement new technology, it's about making sure those tools are right for line managers and they have the access to those tools to be able to deliver their role effectively, and support that with appropriate training in those tools and also wider development for the line manager community. Growth. So we just had a presentation on growth. Project One also has a growth element to it as well. There are probably three reasons for growth and Project One. First thing is that it gives Norse a clear proposition in terms of going to potential clients, in terms of, well, actually we have best practice processes, we have best practice technology, it's future-proof, and that is a proposition that we can make to potential clients. But also it really supports the growth aspirations, because through technology enables your HR and your financial functions to be much scalable in terms of coping with the growth of the organisation. And thirdly, it actually will enable us to free up some resource to then focus more and more on growth in terms of the business partner community in HR and finance. Another area is simplification of moving to one Norse. So at the moment, if we look at some of the processes, and we did this analysis around some of the processes, and what we found, some of the processes were being done three different ways. The history of it is because you had three businesses, you brought them together, didn't necessarily do all the engineering work that would do that in terms of that integration, and therefore we're running three separate types of processes at the moment. There's a massive opportunity in terms of simplifying that area, but also governance. If you look at how the governance for certain processes, we've got different businesses doing different things for different reasons, and actually there's an opportunity really to bring that into a very simplified approach of doing stuff, and really moving the organisation to one Norse, one way of doing things. Digitisation. So if you look, and I'm sure you've got experience of this, you look at some of the things that we are delivering today, what you'll see is that we're still using, there's a lot of emails, there's lots of Excel, there's all sorts of things that we're doing today, which is kind of like, not quite manual, but it's not really using systems to do that activity. Therefore, you can start to use systems in a way which will help to automate the activity of really the back office functions. For example, I don't know how to do screening or pre-employment checks at the moment, but actually there's an opportunity that we can use technology really to automate a lot of that activity and then release resources for higher value activity. Reporting. These next two kind of link together a bit, but it's about reporting. So it's about us being able to get some standardization of reporting across the organisation in terms of KPI, benchmarks, but enables us then to really manage the business better if there's a consistent set of reporting across Norse as an organisation. A link to this is really about data and insights. So if I asked you a question, we did a little thing about, can you define an FTE? I'm sure we will find out multiple different answers in the room about how you actually calculate that. So we actually need to put some principles in place around data and have some consistency around that. And then we need to be able to use that data, data available across Norse, to really drive us insights into the business of Norse and how can we drive further improvement and growth. So that's the case for change that was presented to the board. But that's just one lens of the case for change. You can also look at it a different way. So Project One is an opportunity for transformation. So I think people have a mindset, they might say, oh, it's a systems project. We shouldn't view it as a systems project. This is a transformational change journey. If you just change the systems, you won't get the result that we are looking for here. It requires change across processes, governance, the operating models. So it's a significant transformational change for Norse. And actually, when I was speaking to the board and also to the SMT and I've asked this question, it's really probably the largest transformational change that Norse has ever embarked on. So it is a significant thing for the organisation. And one of the reasons for that is that it's really driving cultural and behavioural change in the organisation. and really achieving the improving people's lives. And it was quite interesting. I did this exercise recently about, well, what do we want people to be saying when we've delivered this project? It was interesting we start talking about the end use of the services of Norse. This is one of the quotes that was given. It was kind of giving an example of someone who was in a care home, and it was what one of the residents might say. And the quote was, "I don't know what's changed, but I know things have improved." So that's what we're really trying to do as an organisation, this type of project. So that's another way of looking at Project One and what we're trying to do. Also, in terms of every change management presentation, we'll always have this, what's in it for me? Because it's really important, right? So why change? You've got to make it relevant and meaningful to individuals in terms of change, because the whole organisation is going to be impacted by this change. And there's a variety of reasons reasons on the screen. So for employees, be better informed. Have you downloaded the Engage app? So that is the first, so that's a pilot we're doing for this event. But really, it's the Engage technology we're looking at to really, as a way to start to have better communication across our employee base, really. So that's what we're doing there. Your queries answered. So we are looking at really having what we call a knowledge hub, which is something where you can go and get your employee HR queries answered. So it's much more intelligent in terms of being able to search and find information and rate that information when you find it. But also what we'll do is we'll have a way that you can raise queries through the telephone, but also through technology into HR, so those queries will get answered and responded to. Also, this one people find quite interesting, get paid early. I think everybody's like, what's that mean? Well, what that's about is we are working it through at the moment in terms of how we'll practically work, but we are looking at technology where, for example, if you were monthly paid and you've been working for 2 weeks, there'd be an opportunity to pull down a percentage of the money that you've already earned early. So it's kind of effectively, you're getting that money prior to payroll. So that's that point there, which we're working through how it will work. Then we're talking about line managers. So the first thing is that one thing is about manager-led recruitment. So we are implementing new recruitment technology, but also we're looking at really kind of the governance around recruitment today. So one of the things that we will be removing and moving towards is we'll move towards standard job descriptions. So there's no need to have a job description reapproved for recruitment. If it's a role which is a replacement role within budget, within salary range, what additional approval does that need? So it puts the manager much more in control of the recruitment process. We're also going to make sure we have line managers given the tools to be able to do their jobs. There's a range of technology, things that we will be providing managers to be able to do that, to help with people and business management. But also, the point before, we're trying to give managers access to the data and the reporting they need to be able to deliver their roles. And there are a range of things that we're also doing for clients and prospects as well. So, we go to competition of, we've got best practice processes, we've got future-proof technology, and we're sort of scalable as an organisation. But this is just a sample. There's a kind of whole load of other things that we've got in terms of kind of benefits for individuals. So the scope of what we are delivering, and this is trying to keep it as a very simple slide, there's quite a lot of complicated scope to talk about, but access. So we've implemented last week, you might have seen, we've migrated MHR, which is our current payroll solution, into what we call a hosted environment, and that will continue for a period of time. During that time, we are starting to implement technology from Access, so the Engage app is something from Access. We will be shortly launching something called Screening, which is about your pre-employment checks. We'll be launching that by the end of July, and then we'll be launching some more people technology in January next year, hopefully, where it's about new recruitment technology, it's about case management, but also it's about employees and manager self-service. So we're looking at things like trying to put holidays onto the system and activities like that. And then longer term, we will be looking at learning management system and also payroll and moving it to Access as well in the longer term. Broadbean, they're a partner, so they provide job board integrations. So at the moment, there are a limited number of job boards that we integrate with. This gives the business control to select which job boards they want to advertise with. This is a cost associated with that, but it gives us options for thousands of different job boards globally where we want to go to. And Silver Cloud are the implementation partner. In the middle, it's Dynamics 365. There's a range of financial modules within that. So there's finance and management accounting, assets and leases, procurement and accounts payable, invoice and credit control, project management and accounting in that module. And then Profix is a tool that we're implementing to assist with cash flow and budgeting. And HSO, they are our implementation partner. And if you do go and visit our stand outside there, you may be lucky enough to get some HSO socks. And then the last part of that is Power BI, which I think some of you already have access to. But it's really about once we get the data in place, get our systems in place, we then can start to BI across the organisation. And of course, there's a range of supporting activities that we're doing to do that. So there's stuff around training, development, communications, all to kind of make this work as a programme. These are target dates, so not the absolute dates, but this is where we're aiming for. So Engage, that's the pilot's launched today, screening in July. And you can start to see we move through a number of activities in terms of access stuff. The D365, we are starting the implementation in July. We will work with HSO from there. It will take about a year to be able to do that. And enterprise data, that's going to be very much phased. We want to get the reporting stuff working in the products that we've got first, before and the data principles established before we start rolling out wider enterprise data. So, opportunities for questions in a minute, but we do have our stand. You might have seen these on the outside there. We've got various bags and goodie bags that we've got there. Come to the stand, ask questions, and if we've got a bit of demonstration as well, we can show you some of the products on the stand as well. So I'm busy looking across the room now. Have we got time for questions? Oh, there's a question down here.
I mean, it's not loaded, but will there be a project too?
Well, it's a good question. It's a question, right? And it's like, will there be project 2? Well, in a way, yes, right? So the way I describe these types of changes, you normally do a project which is about your kind of system selection, trying to work out what you're trying to do, a kind of initiation and discovery, which is kind of what Viking was. We've done that. We're now in project 1, which is the big change, the big implementation. The issue, what you find in organisations is, though, they finish the project, we've delivered, we've gone live, we pack up the project and we all leave, right? And then you come back to it 6 months, 12 months, 18 months later and go, well, we didn't get all the benefit from that, did we? Why didn't we do that? It's because you need a project 2, or whatever you're going to call it. But it's really, you need to think about in a project way about how you then really embed the change into the organisation. Because there'll be stuff that you will learn. There'll be stuff that works brilliantly. There'll be stuff that doesn't work quite well. So you need to make some changes to it. And you do need to think about having that next project once you've completed the main system implementation. So is there a question, Danny?
Thank you for that. That's very interesting. I'm Melvin Stone from Norse Consulting. Can you talk to us a bit more about the leases and assets piece that you mentioned briefly just a minute ago?
I've got my finance colleagues down here who will be able to answer your question much better than I can. So if you've got a mic, we get Julian to answer that question for you.
So good question, but what do we mean by leases and assets? Is there a more granular perspective on that question?
Thanks, Julian. I'm coming at it from a property perspective, but from a group perspective, we've got a lot of assets, vehicles, equipment, some of which we own, some of which are leased. How does this project help us manage those?
For starters, it will help us by ensuring that we actually have a record of all of our assets. Indeed, irrespective of the asset, whether or not we own it or we lease it, fundamentally we need to know that we've got the asset, where the asset is, and in terms of its condition, and we will manage that. When we know what we've got and how we need to account for, and it's primarily an accounting perspective at this moment in time, is that we can ensure that we charge those bits of the divisions that are consuming that asset with the right costs. But if we look at sort of assets and leases from the perspective of, let's say, fleet management, and I'm thinking blue collar rather than property ownership, but the principle is very much the same. We want to ensure that here's the question, is that we join up the costs of operating that asset up with the revenues that we generate from that asset. So, for example, if I've got a vehicle, then I need to ensure that that vehicle is driving revenues and that I'm matching those revenues to the costs. I'm guessing, Melvin, in terms of the property, clearly we will have properties that are rented. Rented is a lease. They will be on our assets record, and we need to ensure that the cash inflows and outflows connected with that ownership are paired. If we've got assets inside of those properties, they will be owned or leases, and they will be impaired through time. And then there's the whole profile of knowing what we've got and the replacement for that asset through its lifetime can be planned, rather than currently where we are. We're not absolutely sure of what we've got. We don't know where it is. We don't know who's consuming it. And we don't know when we're going to replace it. And if we do know when we're going to replace it, how are we going to fund it? Are we going to own it, buy it with our own cash? Are we going to use finance resources to lease that through time? What this will do is provide more certainty about what we've got and allow us to plan how we're going to address the need as it happens through time. So this is very much about accounting for those assets and leases rather than the operational management of the assets. Does that address your question sufficiently? Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? What's in it for you?
And everybody.
Well, these are just some of the reasons why we've got what's in it for me. It's going to be quite personal in terms of what the benefits are. There's a whole list of different things in terms of the benefit for the project itself. It will depend on where you are in the organisation, what kind of role that you're in. But at a minimal level, for somebody who could, a blue-collar worker, be better informed about the organisation, there's going to be a benefit to them as an individual, understand more about the organisation they work in. But they can actually ask questions and get them answered. That's going to be a benefit to them. And the fact that if they want to draw down some money, they can get paid early for doing that.